like, I'm not lazy. I don't sit on my couch that much ever. Like, I wish I did. I actually want to like potato more often. Right. So I think it's about like changing the perception that like you can be an athlete, you can be a teacher, you can be a doctor, you can be an artist, a business professional, a CEO. You can be a successful individual, and just so happens that you consume cannabis. Cannabis doesn't define you, right? It's a tool in your toolkit. And that's what I'm trying to change as a narrative. It's like cannabis is almost like a supplement. You can use it for a specific reason. And in a way, it kind of is. It's a plant, it's an herb, right? It's medicinal. It's proven to have potential benefits for individuals. So I think it's just like rewriting a bit of like what the modern stoner can look like. It can literally be like the mom on the street, the grandma in the park. You never know who is a stoner nowadays, right? Yeah.
Welcome to Modern Psychedelics, where we explore the transformations made possible through intentional engagement with psychedelics. This podcast will help you integrate high consciousness living into the everyday and deepen the work ignited by altered states. You can expect balanced and grounded conversations around therapeutic, ceremonial, and recreational containers. My name is Lana Pribic, your host and guide. I am a 3-time certified professional life coach, and I work with people who want to integrate higher levels of consciousness into their daily lives so they can feel more peace, fulfillment, and connection. After all, our time here on Earth is so brief, so let's make sure we're really living. The song you hear is called Lost Horizon by Peace Sign. All right, let's journey. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Welcome back. If you're new, it's so nice to have you here. I hope that you are enjoying exploring the library of our episodes here at Modern Psychedelics. So I have a very fun podcast interview for you today with Anna Lee, aka the Cannabinista. So we actually recorded this live in studio in Toronto. So the cadence and the energy of this episode is just very fun. And there was such a beautiful flow between Anna and I as we discussed mindful consumption with cannabis and just had a really rich conversation. I learned so much from Anna, and ever since speaking to her, I have actually been applying some of the tips that she talked to us about in this episode, and I have been just having some really good results. So let me just introduce you to Anna before I get into talking about the episode. So her platform, Cannabinista, is a media and community platform dedicated to providing educational cannabis content for the modern stoner, whether it's through showcasing her love for cannabis infusions, sharing her knowledge about mindful cannabis consumption, or simply presenting a new perspective on what it means to be a stoner in the modern day. Anna's purpose as Cannabinista is to leverage her platform to elevate women in cannabis and redefine the definition of stoner to eliminate stigmas. So Anna is so passionate about, redefining stoner culture and really bringing this new idea to the public of what it means to be a cannabis consumer. She is incredibly educated about the plant and has so much to share about that. But what I really loved about this episode was getting into the pillars of mindful consumption. So for me personally, cannabis is something that I adore. I adore cannabis. I'm a very regular user. I have become more and more of a regular user actually since starting psychedelic work, because I find that it's a very gentle way to kind of drop me back into that state and also helps me with the process of integration. But there's this dark side to cannabis. It's so accessible. It's here in Canada. It's legal here in Canada. It's so easy. It's kind of non-committal to engage with it. It's always there. It makes things better. So it's a substance that I feel like needs a lot of intentionality and a lot of mindfulness if we decide to approach it. I think there is great potential for abuse and great potential for going to cannabis in an unintentional way. So that was one of my favorite parts of this conversation. And then I also loved when Anna provided us with her pro tips to avoid that groggy feeling, the cannabis hangover the next day. I texted her yesterday after editing the episode, and I asked her for some suggestions on craft growers, like these growers who are focused more on organic growing practices without the use of pesticides. And I went out to the store and I bought some from a brand called Woody Nelson. So she suggested 3 brands to me: Carmel, Simply Bare, and Woody Nelson. And I have to say that I definitely feel that inhaling that smoke from the joint was much more gentle on my lungs. So after that, I went and got Thai food from a spot that she recommended. And at the end of the episode, you'll hear us just bantering about our favorite Asian food restaurants in Toronto. And I went and got the Thai food from a spot that she recommended and like smoked this beautiful craft weed and just like had like a little Anna evening by myself. And the weed was amazing. The food was amazing. And I'm just thinking that, wow, Anna knows her shit. And I have so much to learn from her. So shout out to Anna for just being such an awesome person who knows her stuff. And she's just really chill, really relaxed, but also really type A. And I really relate to her in that way because I think we both have this like type A personality that has gotten us both very, very far in our respective platforms and in our work. And then there's also this like really chill, relaxed cannabis stoner within both of us. So I love that we can have both and be both. And I love what she's just doing to the space in general and how just steadfast she is in her commitment to redefining cannabis culture and just providing a platform for the public to start recognizing and releasing some of the stigmas associated with cannabis culture. This conversation is obviously very relevant for cannabis, but also for psychedelics. There's so much that we can learn through the lens that she is presenting for us. So I hope that you enjoy this and check out her work. Her Instagram and her website will be linked in the show notes. Thank you, Anna, for coming and meeting with me in person in Toronto. Other than that, just a little announcement that it is the month of September now. Wow, I have, as of right now, I have 2 spots that are going to be free for my coaching practice starting this month. So if you are looking to start your coaching journey with me, looking to amplify your integration process and get coaching through a methodology that will allow you to experience an expanded higher level of consciousness in your day-to-day life, get in touch with me. Fill out a coaching application that's linked in the show notes and we can get on a call to chat and just make sure that this is something that is aligned for both of us. So I'll leave this intro at that and I'll catch you on the other side with the wonderful Anna. Anna, welcome to the official studio to the show. It's so nice to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you. Nice to see you in person.
Yes, you seem pretty much exactly the same in person as online, which is always such a nice thing when you meet someone.
I would hope so. I would hope so. That would be the worst if I was not the same. You know, when you meet someone and they're like completely different. But
yeah, it happens. It happens. So we're here in Toronto. Tell us a little bit about yourself and about Cannabinista and how it came to be.
Yeah. So I'm Anna. I'm a cannabis educator, content creator, lover of cannabis, enthusiast, whatever you want to call it. And I started this platform, Cannabinista, really on a whim during COVID. I was, working in the corporate world, stuck at home, working from home. And I was living with my best friend at the time. And, I was making edibles at home during COVID. What else is there to do? I also I love food. So I love baking. I love cooking food. I also love cannabis. It was just kind of second nature for me. And then I just started posting it on Instagram, like on a burner account, right? I literally was sitting on the sofa one day and we just made up the name Cannabinista. So we mashed up the word cannabis and people think it's barista, but it's actually an iteration from fashionista. So I'm taking the ista and kind of to represent like a lover or an enthusiast of something. And then I just started posting videos, recipes, mostly recipes in the beginning. And then at that time, it was really easy to connect with other like-minded cannabis consumers, whether it was like in Toronto and LA. And then from there, I just started building a community of people who also, were interested in recipes, were interested in education. And that's kind of how it all started.
So how far back does your relationship with cannabis go, and how did that begin?
I've been using cannabis for 10 years on and off now. Obviously, when I first got introduced to it, I was in high school. I didn't even work the first time I used it. You're in like the back alley with your friends, you're smoking. It's like the typical story, right?
On like lunch break.
Yeah. And, I was always like a very type A kind of student. I was on student council. So it was just like a trying it kind of thing. And it wasn't until university where I actually started using cannabis as a way for relaxation. I was in a very stressful program. I also had a very busy schedule. And I found that with cannabis, it would help me relax at the end of the school day. And also I was really into lifting heavy weights at that time. And I found it was a really good like post-workout recovery. So that was kind of like my later university years. And it wasn't until when I came back to Toronto, kind of had my own place settled in and everything, where I really started to be really enamored with cannabis and started learning more about the nuance of it beyond just consumption, and actually learning the science of it, the complex world of cannabinoids and all that kind of stuff. But it's been a really evolving relationship. It's changed so much from when I first started using it to how I use it now.
Totally. Yeah. That's why we call it a relationship, right? Because it takes work and it evolves over time. You mentioned that you were type A. I'm curious about that a little bit. Do you still kind of identify as being that way, or do you find that cannabis is kind of like chilled that out a little bit, or what's your relationship with that? I'm sure it serves you a lot in the work that you do.
Yeah.
Tapping into that.
Yeah. Oh, I'm still type A.
Yeah.
Like it is in my DNA, in my inner core. And cannabis is what helps me balance that.
Perfect.
Because there is a negative side to my type A-ness. Obviously, it's helped me with career and other aspects of my life, but it is a detriment in many ways. And that's where cannabis kind of helps me, is like being mindful, because I have an issue. I can't be mindful. It's so hard for me. It's really difficult to like be in the present moment and slow down. And when I do consume cannabis, it really is, most of the time, it is one of the reasons is really to slow down and be able to check in with myself in a way and not have that clouded, maybe it's a bit of anxiety too, but it really helps me bring that down and like connect with myself.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. Since I started consuming cannabis more seriously in the last 4 or 5 years, I feel that I've chilled out so much, but I still have that type A as well. And yeah, I love the way that you put that it kind of helps you balance it out. And it's the yin to the yang.
Yeah, yeah.
Would you say that's the main benefit for you of consuming cannabis, that like it helps bring you to the present moment and create mindfulness? Or is there anything else that you would say draws you to continue working with and developing your relationship with cannabis? What are the benefits for you?
Yeah, it's honestly a plethora. And it's funny because I start to learn about these benefits almost after the fact, if that makes sense. Oh, I didn't realize I could use it for this. One of the initial reasons was actually insomnia. So in my early 20s or mid 20s, I had really bad insomnia. Like my sleep schedule was terrible. I was commuting, like driving like 2-3 hours a day to go to work. And then, probably not exercising enough. And on top of that, stress. So cannabis really helped me with my insomnia. But there is some kind of studies there about how it kind of affects REM sleep and whatnot. I'm trying to better fine-tune that as well. So insomnia was one of the things. It also helped me heal my relationship with food in terms of slowing down with eating food and nourishing myself and appreciating food more. I've had a bit of a history with not like ED necessarily, but just like an unhealthy perspective in how I see food. So when I consume cannabis, so cannabis enhances your taste buds, specifically the compound THC. So I was able to kind of heal the way I look at food and also eat more slowly and mindfully, which is really interesting. Post-workout recovery, I talked about it for that. It is excellent for that, specifically topicals. If I take off this top right now, you'll see how massive my shoulders are, but I love putting topicals on any very tight areas after working out, and it just helps with kind of like that inflammation. What else do I use it for? Oh, sex. Cannabis and sex actually just released an episode on this, but it was something that I've recently discovered, and I was like, okay, helping with sex anxiety, libido, performance, all that kind of stuff.
And also dropping you into the present moment for that too,
it's the same thing, right?
It's the mindfulness.
Yeah, it's the mindfulness. I could go. Oh, and I guess another thing that I really recently started to think about is how cannabis helps me with empathy and almost like seeing people's perspectives better. And opening my eyes a little bit more to people. Yeah, putting myself in people's shoes. I guess that's a different way to say it. Yeah.
That's really cool. I have a friend, he's a huge cannabis connoisseur. And the way he described it to me once was that like he uses the word ganja, but the ganja helps you to, open up your mind and see things from a higher perspective. And I would definitely agree with that. And hearing you reflect that as well is, very validating. And I think also why people find it so useful for psychedelic integration. Have you heard anyone talk about that?
Like in combination with psychedelics, or
not even in combination, like the integration period afterwards. So if you have a very meaningful or intense psychedelic experience, you can consume cannabis after some time has passed, and it kind of helps to deepen those insights.
Okay.
Huge fan of that.
Okay. I've done that before, but I didn't think about it from that perspective. Okay.
That's so cool. So so many use cases. The relationship with food, that was really interesting. You said that how I see food has changed. So how did you see food before, and then how do you see it now? Because I know a lot of people listening really struggle with that.
Okay. As a woman, I feel like a lot of women, just like internally, there is some type of weird relationship with body image, right? Whether you have body image issues or not, it's just like, I don't know, it's just like in our society, like back in the day when you're reading like 17 magazine, you see all these like skinny girls and whatever, right? That whole back in the day thing. I think growing up, I've wanted to, when I say growing up, I mean more like a kid, but I've always expected myself to look a certain way. And when I wasn't looking that certain way because of what media was trying to tell me, I'm the type of person that like wants to fix things. So I'm like, why do I not look like that? And then as that narrative started growing more and more, as I became into my teens and, entering womanhood and stuff like that, I started to like almost control what I was eating, but in an unhealthy way, like going through all the typical fad diets and stuff like that. And then at that time, I also didn't have a healthy relationship with working out either. So it was a combination of just trying to make my physical body look a certain way, even though in the back of my head, I knew that was impossible. I have certain bone structure. I have certain genetics and DNA. Obviously now I'm more mature, so I understand that. But so when I was trying to kind of control my food intake or not eating a lot, like that just was not healthy. And then over the years, what I started realizing was after consuming cannabis, your taste buds are enhanced, right? There is that dopamine hit because of food consumption, especially if the food tastes good. And when I also consume cannabis, I'm able to eat slower, chew more mindfully. And during that process, I found that it helped me appreciate food for its nutrition rather than demonizing it as, oh, it's causing me this XYZ, right? And that's kind of the intentional, and it all ties to the mindfulness. It was almost like it awakened my mind and made me realize that like I was looking at food completely wrong, right? It is literally nourishing my body and being able to slow down and eat in a mindful way. I know it sounds it's like intuitive eating, I guess you could say. It essentially kind of helped me heal that relationship with food. And that's kind of the story.
Beautiful. Yeah. The food is something that so many people struggle with because it's the easiest drug to go to, especially things like sugar. It's like literally the most easily accessible thing that can be treated like a drug, comfort, a thing to, escape the pain or escape the discomfort of being human. So the fact that you were able to heal your relationship with food through cannabis and the mindfulness that it allowed you to access is huge.
Yeah, I mean, but what's the interesting side of that is there's also the flip side where there is a community of people also online saying that, when you get the munchies, people overconsume food as well, right? So it's a fine balance.
Okay, I have that problem.
So my tip is just to stay hydrated. I always tell people, like, when you're having a cannabis experience, so you will feel more thirsty, right? That's literally because of what's happening. Consume electrolytes with water and have that with you, and just have some healthy snacks, or you consume before you have your dinner, so your dinner is your munchies.
Oh my gosh, that's my favorite thing to do.
Like the best.
Friday
and cooking
night.
When you're it's the best.
The best. I love it. What is your relationship like with other psychedelics and other medicines?
Yeah, I've definitely dabbled in mushrooms, psychedelic mushrooms. I would say maybe it's not something for me that I feel drawn to consume all the time. It's very powerful, right? I've used it for spiritual purposes. I've used it for recreational purposes, and I haven't dabbled in it for a year now, but the few years that I was very interested in mushrooms, like it was eye-opening experience, that's for sure. And again, it like made me appreciate the world around me more, right? So I've dabbled in mushrooms. What else have we done? I've tried DMT once. That was intense.
Was it like a breakthrough experience?
Semi. I went like 75% because I didn't let myself go past that portal.
For sure.
So I was like, no, I'm good.
The ego was like, nope.
So it was like through a pen, and it was just like one toke, but it was very strong and it was like, it was intense, but it was very beautiful. But I stopped. I like didn't open the door.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was
Okay.
like, fuck it.
Not ready yet?
No, I don't want to go there.
Yeah, I haven't done a full DMT release myself either. It's one of the scarier ones, I
Yeah.
think. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Is there any psychedelic that you're interested in trying or that like you feel called towards?
I've definitely wanted to do the whole ayahuasca experience and ceremony. I was in Mexico was it last year? And, they have a lot of opportunities to do that. But I don't know. I feel like it's something that I really have to plan out and know why I want to do it. I don't think I'm like right now, I don't have a reason to. And for me, I like to be intentional with why I'm using a substance because I believe, this has happened to me before. One time when I used mushrooms unintentionally, it punished me because I was using it unintentionally. And I knew that. So reflecting back, I was like, it was almost like, you're right. I shouldn't have used you unintentionally and you've kind of, punished me for the experience, I guess, in a way. So now I'm like extra cautious with psychedelic experiences because, you have to be I feel like there has to be a purpose in a way.
For sure.
Yeah.
I love that. One of the reasons I wanted to have you on Modern Psychedelics is because you definitely are aligned with my mission here around mindfulness and approaching, you use mindful consumption, I use intentionality, but just approaching these experiences very intentionally. And I definitely want to dig into that, but I feel like there's some more things about you that I want to keep digging out.
Let's go.
Yeah. So you're Chinese?
Yes.
Chinese. Yes. Okay. So I'm Eastern European. And for me, I'm assuming that like your parents may also be very strict and like
hella strict.
Drugs are bad.
Oh yeah, so bad.
Okay. Yeah. When I came out of the psychedelic closet to my parents, it was like a whole thing. And I almost like made a confession. I'm curious what your experience has been like with that. Do your parents know? Like, how do they feel about it? Tell us about that.
God. No, they don't know.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
No. I've tried to randomly insert information about cannabis. Like, for example, my mom was like saying how she has trouble sleeping. And I was like, oh, did you know that like these studies on anti-inflammatory, blah, 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 and all these things are like, my dad will be like, oh, this part of my body hurts. And I'm like, oh, did you know? And their response to the did you knows made me realize they are not ready. And I don't think they'll ever be because they are quite older than me. So my parents are almost 70. So we almost have a really large generation gap. And I think they're kind of like of the age where they're going to be set in their ways. It's very difficult to change their minds about a lot of things, even with other topics. So I'm struggling. I think right now, I don't know if I necessarily want them to accept it or let them know because I feel like at the same time, I almost just want them to live a happy life and not be stressed because knowing them, if they found out, they would be stressed.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
What's that like for you? I mean, your platform's pretty huge. Do they not go on the internet or?
No, they don't.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not likely that they will come across one of your TikToks.
No, they definitely wouldn't. I mean, if anything, it would be like a family friend who saw it, who sent it to someone's daughter or son or whatever, maybe through that. But if that happens, then I'll obviously expose myself. But I think right now it's almost like I am purposely putting that part in the back of my brain and not letting it affect me because if I care too much about what they think, I'm just going to continue to live my life to please them. And that's what I did for a lot of my life. Like literally for probably like 27 years, I'm turning like, so literally only the past 2 years I haven't been fulfilling their dreams. So I think I just need to really almost block that out, not in a non-mindful way, but in a way where I'm consciously knowing that I'm not going to tell them because it's not the time and place. The time and place will come one day, but it's not right now.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. I was so curious about that because my parents too, like so against anything other than alcohol, but like alcohol's totally okay.
Even though it kills literally hundreds and thousands of people in North America every year. Yeah, but it's been like with my parents, it's been quite a journey. And I was actually able to get my mom to an ayahuasca ceremony. And my mom's actually like very open and she does the microdosage. She loves Kana, which is not psychedelic, but it's psychedelic adjacent. And, they definitely struggle with my cannabis consumption. But it's been an interesting journey. Yeah.
It's been an interesting journey.
Interesting. There's a lot of new studies coming out, specifically from Canada, how more seniors are going medical cannabis route. It's actually increasing quite a bit. And the number of bad experiences amongst the older generation has declined in the last 3 years. Obviously, that's with legalization, with more education, right? They're seeing that the demographic of older individuals in Canada are leaning towards cannabis.
That's cool. Do you have an older demographic in your audience at all?
Certain platforms I do, yeah. I've been getting a lot of emails from people that are, they're like literally emailing me, hey, me and my wife, we're 68 years old. We've been consuming for so long. You're like teaching us new things about like drinks and stuff like that. People don't, I guess the older generation, they don't know about things like, cannabis infused lube, cannabis infused chips.
I didn't even know about that.
Or like stuff like that. Like more novelty products are coming out now. I guess the older demographic is more used to like hash, flour, gummies that are like made to look like Skittles, like that traditional stuff. I've been getting a lot of emails from older folks, which is great. Yeah, it really depends on the platform because they gear towards more the long form stuff, I think. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. I wanted to touch on your purpose for a second. So on your website, it says, my purpose as a digital creator is to leverage my platform to elevate BIPOC women in the cannabis industry, advocate on the benefits cannabis has for supporting one's mental and physical health, and help end cannabis stigmas. Tell us a little bit about that. How did you come up with this purpose?
That's outdated.
It's outdated.
My website is so ugly. I'm relaunching on September 1st, but I've kind of redone my mission and purpose a little bit, but it's still similar the same. At the end of the day, what I see my mission, my overall purpose in life is to show a different side of cannabis that is basically the opposite of what traditional media and the war on drugs has presented it to be over the past 50, 60 years. The stigma towards cannabis still exists, even in legalized countries like Canada, for example, and still in the US and states and stuff like that. So knowing that even though there is proven studies and there's legalization, people still feel ways about cannabis because it's a lack of education. So my goal is really to bring forth education in a way that is modernized, right? I don't feel like there's a lot of resources online that talk about cannabis in a non-stonery way. I guess that's a different way to say it. It's almost like I want to redefine what it means to be like a stoner, right? I love the legacy or like OG culture. I love that side of what has brought cannabis to become cannabis, right? Like the traditional culture. But I think that also cannabis consumers look very different nowadays. Like, I don't think people would think that I love taking dabs. Like, they would see me on the street and they'd be like, oh, okay, I wouldn't expect that, right? So I think it's just people are changing and I want to be there to support them in that and ultimately demystifying all the negative stigmas and stereotypes that are associated with cannabis culture.
Do you know the percentage of the population that engages with cannabis?
I don't know. I think I've recently saw a study.
It's pretty high.
I think, I don't know. We got to look into this. I'm sure there's a strong percentage of people or high percentage of people that have tried once in their life. But in terms of frequent users, I'm not sure about that.
I heard a stat somewhere not too long ago. I don't remember what it was, but I remember thinking, oh, wow, that's way higher than I thought.
Yeah. If you look on Google Trends, the search terms for cannabis, weed, 420, all that kind of stuff, CBD, THC, has actually remained pretty stagnant for the last 10 years. You actually don't see a lot of people increasing in search for it necessarily, which is interesting. But I wonder if it's because people are going to social media and other platforms, not necessarily Google.
Right. Or maybe the market is catching up with the public perception finally.
Yeah, that makes sense too. And also, to be honest, I don't know if Google is censoring that data either. Maybe they don't want...
Definitely in some countries.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So you probably can't even see, or people probably use VPNs and stuff because people in their home country, they probably can't even search that up because they're afraid of being caught. So that data actually might be incorrect.
Okay. Yeah, it's so clear that you're so passionate about education, like just based on the mission you shared, but also when you look at your content, you have so much nuanced information and it's just so clear when you talk that you just love to share and educate and just show people that hey, a lot of the things that you've been taught is incorrect. Like very similar to me with psychedelics, right? Psychedelics and cannabis are so parallel in terms of the drug war and all of that. So I'm curious, what do you think makes a good cannabis educator in today's day and age? What does it take to really reach the public and today's audience?
I think obviously you have to be well versed in a variety of different topics because cannabis is really complicated because there's hundreds of different compounds and a lot of them are not even studied. But I think the one thing I think about what makes a good educator is someone that actually talks about the nuance because cannabis is not for everyone. Even though I am pro cannabis, I also like to call out that it's actually not for everyone and some people actually should not consume cannabis. obviously like I want to present cannabis in a positive light, but I don't want to encourage people to consume either. It's about helping people who are already consuming or already interested in finding ways to improve their life. But I'm not trying to convert people. Like, that is not what I'm trying to do whatsoever, right? If anything, it's actually equipping people with the knowledge to make the decision on their own. So, because cannabis can have negative side effects for certain individuals, right? Like with anything in life, right? Like coffee can have negative side effects. You know, some people can't handle psychedelics either. So the nuance is so important. And the problem with social media is that it's really hard to communicate nuance because people just see something and they just like, they always take it the wrong way. I'm like, God dang.
That's why we love the podcast and the YouTube. Yeah. So you're moving over to longer form content because of that.
Yes.
And the censorship.
Yes, exactly. YouTube, podcasting. YouTube still censors though. They still censor. So you do have to be careful there.
My YouTube got taken down.
Oh, really?
Because I promoted a microdosing company and they like full on sent me an email. They took everything down.
Yeah.
And then a week later they gave it back to me. But yeah, YouTube can.
Except they have Coors Lights ads like all over the place, right? Which is like literally terrible for people's health. I know. It's so, again, it's obviously like big, powerful forces behind that. That sucks. Yeah, you got to be careful. You got to like almost not put it in the description. Like you got to link it. Like you have your landing page and then you link it on there. But then,
I'm not even working with anyone like that anymore.
Okay.
Like it's just not worth the risk.
Yeah.
No illegal companies
anymore.
Yeah. But how are they with like censoring cannabis companies? If you have a, we both work with packs, but if you're working with like a consumable product, is it okay to share that if it's within the legal jurisdiction?
So it's almost, there's two things. One, there is laws in Canada on the Cannabis Act that you cannot promote the sale of cannabis, essentially. Okay, so that's one layer. And then there is the social media overlords saying that you cannot promote illegal drugs. Even, doesn't matter where you're located because the internet is global, right? So you have these two forces that are cracking down on substances. I guess we'll just blanket that. At the end of the day, freedom of speech. We live in Canada. We have the right to express ourselves. And through media is how I choose to express myself. But yeah, so it's difficult. That's one of the challenges, right? Spotify is great or podcasting is great because at least for now, they don't seem to be censoring. I mean, Joe Rogan talks about fucking drugs all the time. Yeah. And he's getting paid by them. So as long as he is still there, honestly, I know some people hate him, whatever, but what he's doing is at least allowing for these alternative topics to have a platform.
True.
For now. We'll see how this changes. I wonder if Spotify will catch on, or I keep saying Spotify, but I wonder if podcasts will catch on over time. But yeah, YouTube is pretty strict on certain things. You just gotta know the algorithms and like certain words that trigger them to age restrict videos. I don't know if you have that either, age restriction.
I don't know if I do. I think it automatically maybe does it. I should look into that.
Yeah, because age restriction will prevent you from getting views, right? Essentially. So you got to make the content in a way that doesn't get age restricted.
Yeah,
so,
interesting.
Yeah.
A lot of people hate on Joe Rogan and whatever. I don't really have an opinion, but he actually follows my Instagram page.
Oh,
Isn't
really?
that so cool?
That's really cool.
Yeah.
He's into the whole, stuff.
Loves his DMT.
Yeah.
Loves his DMT. Let's talk a little bit about conscious consumption, intentional usage. So we have conscious consumption on one side of the spectrum, let's say. What do you think is kind of on the other end of the spectrum, like the opposite of that, the like destructive usage or unmindful usage? How would you kind of describe those two ends of the spectrum?
Yeah. Mindful consumption to me is when you are taking time to think about why you're using something before you use it, whether it's for medical or recreational or therapeutic. Because I think it is okay to mindfully use something for recreational purposes. There is no, as long as you're not harming yourself, as long as you're not harming yourself or the people around you, that is the only nuance, right? So mindful consumption is whether, you're being mindful about your dose or the format that you're choosing to consume. I don't consume every day either. I think it's good to kind of have a balance in between, and I don't need it every day either. But like an example of this would be like, I'm finishing work or whatever, and I'm like, you know what, I need to relax because I feel a little bit anxious after editing all day. I'm gonna have a little cannabis infused beverage and enjoy my evening. That's me being mindful. On the flip side, not being mindful would be like if I'm literally just pounding gummies or like just literally just smoking joints like crazy for no reason. Oh, I'll just have another one. Oh, it's not a big deal. Do I need it?
Like you don't even know that you're doing it.
Yeah, it's almost like the there's almost like taking a little few seconds and like just checking in with yourself, being like, oh, you know what, actually, I don't need it today, or, you know.
Totally.
So that's, I would say, the different ends of the spectrum. But again, there's people also who literally are prescribed medical cannabis, so they literally need it every day for day-to-day function, right? Whether it's arthritis, pain, or things like that's completely different. I think there's a little bit of nuance there.
For sure. What do you think about recreational consumption and making it mindful? The other night, you know, I had my friend introduced me to the concept of a girl dinner. It's basically just have you heard of this?
Yeah,
just
having like a little grazing board.
Yeah. So she came over one night, and then I had all this stuff left in my fridge. I was like, I'm gonna have a little girl dinner.
Yeah.
And put on this Turkish show that I've been loving, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna, you know, smoke some weed, hit the packs.
Yeah.
And to me, that was very mindful and intentional. What do you think about that? And just kind of, relaxing with it and using it in that way.
I don't see anything wrong with that. Where if it became something where you were doing that every day to the point where you didn't know why, then maybe I'd be like, oh, like, I would check in with you, be like, oh, like, how are things going, or, you know, whatever. But I think as long as you are consciously making the decision and you know how it's going to affect you, I think where it could be a problem is, let's say you did so many edibles where the next day you missed your podcast. I think that would be like, I'd be like, hey, Lana, you know, did you need to consume that many gummies that night? But that wouldn't happen, right? Because you're a mindful user. So I think there's that just a little bit of a nuance there.
Yeah. I made sure to not consume last night because I knew we had this interview today. I love the nuance, right? Like you just said, right? There's this fine line. And I think for me, that fine line is like when it starts impacting my day-to-day the next day, particularly that groggy kind of feeling, that weed hangover.
Okay, yep.
So there's two things there. Like one is don't consume so much or don't consume so mindlessly that you get to that point. But then there's another part where that's sometimes like a natural aspect of smoking cannabis.
Okay.
So how do you deal with that like groggy feeling? Avoid like tips to avoid it. Should it be happening? Tell us a little bit about that.
Thank you. Thanks for bringing this up. I love this topic because I don't think you have to be groggy the next day. And I have some really good tips to share with you for that. Number one, hydration. We talked about this before the episode started. Are you staying hydrated before, during, and after your experience? What food are you eating? Are you eating junk food during that, right? Is it a lot of sugar, things like that? Are you consuming close to bedtime? If you're consuming too close to bedtime, you're almost feeling the experience in your sleep. Does that make sense? So that's why you wake up and it almost feels like you're still high. If I'm sleeping at 10:30, 11, I like to consume probably starting around 6:30 to 7. So you give yourself a little bit of time to almost like kind of calm down before the night ends in a way. And I would also say the types of products that you're using is looking at that as well, and also the dose. Like maybe you're consuming a little bit too much because experience lasts very long and you're not able to dwindle down. So I would say if someone's feeling weed hangovers, like that's definitely what I would look at. When I was first consuming, I definitely had weed hangovers, and as I made these little adjustments, never.
Wow.
And I wake up at 6 a.m.
Wow.
And like I also sleep early, but like I don't, on the nights I consume, I can literally feel refreshed the next morning. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what about, I heard you talk, I think it was on your podcast about like organic weed and pesticide spraying.
Yeah.
How do people get a hold of organic weed? We were just talking about the Swiss filtered decaf.
Yes.
Yeah. Where do we find that?
So there isn't like official, like the in the US they like organic labelings, which is also a lie. Apparently you just pay to get those labels now. So I don't even trust if anything's organic. So it's not that you can get organic cannabis, let's say. It's more of knowing your producer and how they grow. Because I think organic it's like a blanket word. So let's just drop that word because I feel like people say everything's organic nowadays. I like to look for producers who are small batch. So meaning that they only grow a certain amount of cannabis per year, and it's like hand trimmed, they actually know they're not adding pesticides, they're not spraying stuff into their cannabis. And in Canada, at least, this is typically, I trust craft flower growers. So next time you go to a store, ask for a craft flower. That just means that I think they grow less than a certain number of kilograms per year. So it's small micro batch. I can send you
like
some
artisanal
brands.
weed.
Yeah, in a way, yeah. It's not like bougie, but it's more just like people that really love cannabis and are growing it for quality, not for mass production. Because there are tons of brands that grow for mass production and have the shittiest quality. Terrible stuff for you that you do not want to be putting into your body.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I wonder how much of an impact that plays on the groggy feeling the next day, because like when you eat crap food, it definitely affects you. So I assume
100%. Yeah. When it's not flushed properly. So if someone uses chemicals and sprays, so there's a process when you're about to harvest the cannabis flower where you have to flush it with water, right? a lot of times these companies rush that flushing process. So you literally have remnants of sprays and stuff. And in California, they just came out with an article from the LA Times how they found, basically they tested some producers that had these really terrible chemicals that were negatively impacting people's health. So that just came out. I don't want to regurgitate it, but I'll send it to you later. It's crazy.
Did you know that your problems don't come from the situations or circumstances themselves? Your problems are likely coming from how you approach them. More specifically, your problems might be coming from the level of consciousness that you approach them with. It's pretty simple. Here's how it works. Anytime something happens to you, you can approach the situation from various levels of consciousness. You can come from a low level of consciousness that perpetuates the problem and keeps you stuck, drained, hopeless, and under stress. Or you can come from a high level of consciousness that helps you move forward because you can more easily tap into creative solutions and access your intuition. The good news is that at any given time, you can choose how you show up and therefore have a massive impact on how your life unfolds. The trick is to be aware of all of the options available to you, which most of us aren't. We're stuck in our default modes, which is why most of us feel stuck and unable to move forward. But that job that you hate, your codependent relationship, or the numbing anxiety of not knowing your purpose in life can be the exact thing that moves you forward and gives you clarity as long as you're approaching it from a high level of consciousness. In my coaching program, I'll help you become hyper aware of your current approach and help you shift to higher levels of consciousness. By addressing those unconscious energy blockages keeping you stuck, we unlock flow, acceptance, peace, and joy in life. And this isn't woo-woo. I use a research-validated coaching method that's benefited thousands worldwide. So whether you're corporate or spiritual or both, this approach offers practical integration into daily life. And it happens to pair brilliantly with psychedelics. High consciousness living is achievable every day, not just during psychedelic experiences. Psychedelics surely illuminate the path, but it's our job to walk it every day. My coaching program will provide you with a grounded and operational way to integrate high consciousness into your daily life. I am currently onboarding new clients into my practice, so if you'd like to learn more about the program, visit modernpsychedelics.net/coaching. And if you're ready to do this work, go ahead and apply now and book a discovery call with me at modernpsychedelics.net/apply. I'll have both of those links in the show notes for you. All right, let's get back to the episode. So there's two things there that I personally am going to shift in my consumption. One is looking for these craft producers, and two is not hitting the packs 20 minutes before going to bed. Yeah. Okay. That's good. That's really good. What would you say the pillars or like the foundational maybe practices or mindsets are when it comes to being a mindful consumer?
I think it's like knowing your reason why for consuming is really important as well, and knowing your own dose. I think dose is so important because that can make or break an experience. Same thing with psychedelics, right? Like I'm sure you're very intentional, like a micro versus a macro dose, the reason why you're choosing that weight of mushrooms versus another weight. So I think that's important because the same thing as with cannabis is like your dose can literally make or break your experience. If you consume too much, it might have negative side effects. If you consume too little, you might not be getting what you need. And the thing about cannabis is that it's so individualistic. Like what might work for me won't work for you, and vice versa. So you really have to almost like, I don't like to use the word trial and error, but unfortunately that's kind of what it is, in a responsible way. Trial and error in a responsible way. Know what compounds work really well for you, what type of products, what formulations. Maybe it's like a bit of THC and CBD together balance. Maybe it's introducing CBG.
I've heard that about making sure the products have both THC and CBD.
Yeah, the reason why is because high THC in certain individuals can exacerbate some mental health conditions, can increase anxiety for some people. When you add CBD, you're bringing the blend more neutral, I would say. So CBD has that kind of balancing effect. They call it as the entourage effect, but there's actually no science to prove that. It's more anecdotal. But I personally do find that the one-to-one balance, it's a less intense in the head and more holistic, like your whole body. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Totally. You know, in psychedelic terms, it would be like doing iboga, which is the actual whole entire tree and all of the alkaloids, versus ibogaine, which is just the one alkaloid from.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because they work in synergy. There's a reason why they're together.
There's a reason
right?
why nature made it that way.
Exactly.
Not to say that the compounds on their own isolated don't have benefits, but maybe not for everyone. Yeah, no, I love that you said that it's such a personalized thing and you have to trial and error. I've been wanting to inhale less. Thanks to your content, actually. I was like, oh, there's so many more options. And I saw you making like cool cocktails. I was like, I want that. I went and thrifted some vintage cocktail glasses. And I was like, yes, this is going to be the vibe for the summer. And I found these water soluble drops, the Mod brand. And I was so excited. And man, they give me such a headache the next day.
Yeah. So that brand, I don't know.
Okay.
You gotta read the ingredients. There's some stuff in there that is questionable.
There definitely is. Wow, the headache.
Yeah. That probably is not formulated well. I would say that's already a sign that maybe you shouldn't use that. I'll bring you some cannabis powder and dissolvable drops and things like that. Yeah. I make it myself. It's just with oil and organic tapioca starch and stuff like that. And you just...
Yeah. You know what? I did look at your recipe for that. And I was like, okay, if I make this, it's going to be a whole...
It's a lot of work. I'll send you some.
I would love some. Thank
it's just
you.
easier that way.
And the high from consuming it through liquid is a little bit different. It's like a little longer, a little more chill.
Yeah. The reason why is because it's actually a completely different compound.
Okay.
So when you consume through vaporization or through smoking joints, it's THC. But when it goes through your liver, it converts to 11-hydroxy THC.
Okay.
So this is a completely different compound that has more intense feelings for some people. But some people actually don't even feel it because they're missing this enzyme that actually breaks down. I don't know if you've seen people who are like, oh, edibles don't work for me. There's always people that say that as well. It's, again, individualistic, right?
Cool.
Yeah. Cool. The drinks are great. I like the drinks, especially for summertime. But I think a lot of them have a lot of shit ingredients. You got to be careful. Yeah. It's almost like drinking like Coke.
And they're so expensive.
Yeah.
That's why I wanted to. There's $10 a bottle or a serving here in Canada. That's why I wanted to make my
yourself.
Own.
Yeah. I'll give you. I also have these like liquid drops that are neutral flavored, and you can mix into anything.
That's exactly what I've been looking for.
Yeah.
I got the cocktail glasses. I got the cocktail shaker. I just need the.
You need the
That's cool. That's cool. Let's see.
You use the packs for vaporizing.
That's my main thing. I've been using it for 6 years. I love it.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah. Do you smoke joints as well?
I try not to. I will if I'm like out at a party.
Yeah.
I have such a sensitive throat, and being a podcaster and a life coach too, I need to take care of my throat. So it really damages my throat, even just like a hit or two.
Yep.
Yeah.
Vaporizing is a lot better for your lungs for sure, and your throat for sure.
Yeah, even with vaporizing, I feel it in my lungs. So
well, if you think about it, anything other than air, right, it's not going to be the best for you. I mean, it's going to be better than like smoke, but
and the vape pens, another thing I learned from you, vaporizing is vaporizing the dried herb, but vaping is the oils that have the additives, which can also not be great for people. It's almost like we're talking about food, right? The way we talk about food and additives and pesticides, same thing.
My issue with vapes, there's a couple things. It's one, the convenience factor can create habits for people, which I think people aren't mindful about. It's the same with nicotine vaping, right? Two is, I think there's a lack of transparency with what's going into that liquid. Because if you think about it from like a manufacturing process, how is it possible that it gets melted? There has to be something in there that allows it to be in that format. Does that make sense? Like there has to be something that they're adding into there for it to be able to be so quick to vaporize, right? So I would just be careful of like vape pens. I know they're so convenient. It's so easy. There's
they
like
taste
good.
good.
Which is also, well, why does it taste good?
Yeah.
What's flavoring is in there? I think, I've had bad experiences with myself, and I was like getting the most high quality vape. So I was using live rosin, which is essentially cannabis pressed, like cold press essentially into this like thick sauce, kind of like honey. And that's like literally the top of the top, the cleanest. And even then when I was using that through a cartridge, I still felt it in my throat. And then there's also like the metals of the actual cartridge itself. They haven't really studied that, leaking metals, and leaking metals is not good for you to inhale, period. Okay. Gotta be careful. I know. It's like the convenience versus being healthy and mindful.
Well, it's like, it's like the fast food versus the organic homemade food.
It's the same thing. Yeah.
I love that.
The organic, like the healthy lifestyle is always going to take more work, and people don't want to do the work, but
I think if you find like joy in it, like I think of cooking, like, You seem to love cooking as well.
Food,
Find
yeah.
joy in like the chopping and the washing and
Yeah,
the
yeah.
shopping for it.
Yeah.
You know, same thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Find joy in it and enjoyment in it, then it can be like a hobby, more of a hobby and less work.
Less of a task. Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Another thing you talk about a lot is tolerance breaks. Is that like an
Mm-hmm.
aspect of mindful consumption?
Yeah, definitely. I would say, like, for me, tolerance breaks, how I've talked about it is it's not for everyone because, again, we talked about how there's medical users who, like, they cannot take a tolerance break, literally. Like, they got to talk to their doctor, right? Don't listen to me. But for people who are using cannabis more for therapeutic, for recreational purposes, I personally think it's healthy to take a tolerance break because, gives you a chance to actually reflect on your relationship with cannabis, lower your tolerance, right? Because you can build a tolerance to anything over a long period of time and just kind of reconnect with yourself without cannabis. And when you come back to it, you have refreshed perspective, right? You're consuming less, you're spending less on cannabis, you can take less to feel the same effects as before. So I think it's a great mindfulness practice that I think is good to incorporate.
And just high level, how can people go about that? Like, how often should they be taking them? What does it look like to take a tolerance break? How long should a tolerance break be? Like, how do they reintroduce? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. I actually have a free guide on my website that breaks this all down, but I'll give you little hot takes here. Again, it's individualistic. It's going to be different for everyone. So what we do know scientifically is that cannabinoids, so THC, CBD, all that kind of stuff, they stay in your body anywhere from 30 to 90 days. But this is just a range, though. It could be more, could be less. Yeah. So in the US, you hear people talking about this a lot because they still get drug tested. So I always have people messaging me like, what do I do? Like, I'm like, okay, I can't give you advice there. But like, people literally, they want to do tolerance breaks because they're going to get a new job and they're going to get drug tested. So 30 to 90 days is the ballpark. That's like 1 to 3 months. For me personally, again, it's different because I don't consume every day. Because I have breaks in between the week, I find that my tolerance breaks are shorter. Whereas someone who, let's say, has been consuming for like years or like months straight and high tolerance, it's probably going to have a much more drastic effect on them and potential some negative side effects as well. Because essentially it's like withdrawals could happen. Yeah. So for me, I like to do breaks, like I schedule them every 2 to 3 months. And then I'll do the most recent break I did. I did 45 days, but that was more just because I was just doing a challenge. I could probably go longer. I could go shorter. It doesn't really matter. I like to do 2 to 3 weeks of a break. But it also has to time with my schedule because this is like my job is literally cannabis. So I have to figure out when I can, right? Yeah. So that's why I love taking the breaks in between. Yeah, it's important to like also, if you have a health practitioner, like consult with them as well if you are planning to take this break because it affects people differently. So some withdrawal symptoms that you could expect is just like irritability, right? Like maybe you need cannabis for a specific reason. I would find ways to like substitutes almost that you can incorporate during your tolerance break. So for example, if you use cannabis for sleep, maybe look at increasing your chamomile tea, increasing your before bedtime meditation, making sure you're exercising so you can get sleepy at night. Just like finding alternative solutions to help you during that break. That's going to be a great way to kind of set yourself up for success.
Like you're very passionate about breaking this like stereotype of what it means to be a stoner. What is that stereotype and what is it that you're wanting to like reinvent it as?
Yeah, that stereotype, which, I mean, it is true in some sense too, right? Because stereotypes are based on certain populations that do exhibit that stereotype. Sure. I'm thinking like, was that movie? Harold and Kumar, literally the stereotype. Seth Rogen movies, and they're all portrayed as that specific type of lazy person. They're eating junk food. They don't know what's going on with their life. All they're doing, they're just sitting on their couch. Yeah. They're buying like drugs from a drug dealer, and it's just like very typical. That look, I guess you could say. And I think I'm not going to say there's anything wrong with that per se. People can choose to live their life however they wish, but I think it creates a bad rap for people who don't resonate with that lifestyle or who don't act like that or who don't present themselves like that. For example, like us, I'm not lazy. I really sit on my couch that much ever. Like healthy, I wish I did. I actually want to be a couch potato more often. So I think it's about changing the perception that like you can be an athlete, you can be a teacher, you can be a doctor, you can be an artist, a business professional, a CEO, you can be a successful individual and just so happens that you consume cannabis. Cannabis doesn't define you, right? It's a tool in your toolkit. And that's what I'm trying to change as a narrative. Cannabis is almost like a supplement. Like you can use it for a specific reason. And in a way, it kind of is. It's a plant, it's an herb, right? It's medicinal. It's proven to have potential benefits for individuals. So I think it's just like rewriting a bit of what the modern stoner can look like. It can literally be like the mom on the street, the grandma in the park. You never know who is a stoner nowadays, right? Yeah.
Totally. I think it's very valid that some people aren't as open as you and I are about their consumption of cannabis or psychedelics. And then there's also some people out there who have been positively impacted by cannabis, and maybe they want to share that part of themselves with more people in their life, and they want to share their story. But there's, this shame, right? This maybe it's shame or embarrassment or fear because of the social narrative around like stoner culture and like what it means to be someone who smokes weed. Yeah. What would you say to that person?
You're not alone. I still get hundreds and thousands of comments on a day of people calling me drug addict, people saying, basically, I think drug addict is probably the most popular negative term that I get, or people just hating on me for consuming cannabis, and they're like, oh, she's probably has such a waste, like blah, 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 all those insert negative traits. You're not alone, and I think that at the end of the day, you just got to find your people that do support you and that are level-headed people that understand why you want to consume. It's definitely going to be tough to come out there and, present yourself in that way, but like, honestly, at the end of the day, people don't really care that much about you. People aren't really thinking about you when they're going to bed. So, like, why does it matter at the end of the day? That's kind of how I see it. Yeah.
Well, people get so bothered by things that other people do. It's like the shadow. Like, are you familiar with shadow work at all? Like, it's more of like a projection of themselves and their own insecurities or maybe a lack of education or whatever. But, if someone is so bothered by you,
it's probably something internal upon themselves.
Totally. Yeah.
And I think we also, like me, myself, I also sometimes feel the stigma towards myself. Sometimes I'm also like, I have to rewrite my own narrative of what has been embedded into my brain growing up, right? Like sometimes I have those biases towards myself or to people. Sometimes I'm like, oh, I'll be like, oh, why am I like consuming tonight? Like, I feel like kind of like about myself. And I'm like, but wait, no, I'm using it for a reason. Like, it's almost like I have to debunk my own bias towards myself. Yeah.
Do you think that's like part of being a mindful consumer is dealing with that narrative?
Yes.
Like the fact that you have that narrative means that you're being mindful?
Yeah. Almost like sometimes being overly mindful is also could have negative effects, right?
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everything's a balance. It's just like, it's tough.
The yin and yang of life, baby. Yeah, I'm all about that. I've seen a bunch of like your reels, like day in the life of a productive stoner. Tell us what a productive stoner is. Is that the same as being a modern stoner?
Yeah, I guess that video that I did, it was just more to like clap back at, and to be like, hey, like, I bet you're not even doing half these things that I'm doing. Don't hate, like, because I think sometimes people use the word stoner in a positive way, because I'm almost using it as a juxtaposition to say, does that make sense? Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, because people associate stoner, the term is so negative. I'm trying to show it in a very positive light and essentially debunk what people think a stoner does in the day in their life. And I think people really like that video. They were like, sick. This is me too. A lot of people related to it too. In the comments, they were like, yeah, that's me. I'm a mom of 3 and I wake up every morning to make breakfast for my kids. Oh, like I'm a CEO. Like I like do all these things and blah, blah, blah. Like, it's just, it really doesn't define your character and who you are. So that's kind of the message that I was trying to show.
Yeah, and if that doesn't define your character and who you are, it's like focus on the things that do define who you are, right? Like your character, how you show up.
How you treat people, how you treat others around you. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I think a lot of mainstream socializing culture, like here in Toronto, for example, it's really geared towards alcohol consumption.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know about you, but I can't even go near people who are on alcohol anymore. Like I'm like repelled by it. I'm like, where are the stoners hanging out? Like I have, my scene in Toronto, but I guess cannabis has been legalized in Canada for 10 years now?
No, since only 2018.
2018.
5 years.
Okay. 5 years. Okay. Yeah. It seems like I can't even remember when it wasn't. I feel like, like mainstream socializing cultures, bars, places to go out, places to hang out, they're so geared towards alcohol consumption. And even though it's been legal for 5 years now, I feel like the social infrastructure hasn't caught up yet.
Because it's not allowed. So
it's not allowed.
There's a law that you cannot have cannabis lounges in Ontario.
Oh my gosh.
BC just approved them. So BC, but it's only 4 years after, right? Calgary, just for the first time, one of their country music festivals, they're actually allowed to sell cannabis now, but only 2 specific products. And they probably went to battle for that. So you can't have cannabis events and consumption lounges. There are spaces in Toronto, like the if you knows, you know, but they're not establishments, I guess
Legal,
you could call
yeah,
it. So
yeah.
again, that's the stigma, right? It's like, why can't I enjoy a cannabis infused beverage or a cannabis joint on a patio that is designated, right? But you can go drink alcohol and get belligerent on a patio on a Sunday afternoon. Like, stigma, baby.
Yeah, I'd love to know how many people who overconsume alcohol on a given Saturday night cause harm or damage in public.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
It's just ridiculous. What would be your vision for the future of social infrastructure that allows for cannabis consumption? Like, if you could design a lounge or like an experience, what would that be?
Yeah, I've done a couple of events in Toronto, and
Your 421 looked so sick.
Oh, that was crazy. That was a lot of people. That was, which proved to me that people in Toronto want to meet other cannabis folks and like being like-minded users, right? Yeah, that was a more of a house party kind of style. That was like, we had cannabis infused mocktails, we had Cops Donuts, we had every product category of cannabis that you can imagine. We had massages, cannabis infused hand massages, everything. So many things. That was amazing. But another event that I did last year was a mindful consumption event, and we made cannabis infused mocktails, kind of like a workshop, similar to, you know, if you just took a cocktail making class. And then we just kind of hung out, socialized, and then we also had an instructor come in teaching us how to roll joints. So kind of like, I envision the social aspect of cannabis to evolve into workshop type based, more intimate events. I'd love to see music events that start incorporating cannabis infused beverages. Or
that would be amazing.
Yeah, but I don't think alcohol would like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would. Yeah. I don't purchase alcohol anymore at events, but it's like $12 now for a tall can or something. Yeah. It's crazy.
I don't drink anymore, so I used to drink a lot. But
same.
No, that's not. I will dabble in like a natural wine glass here and there, but I get headaches now still, no matter what. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get a hangover while I'm still drunk. Like, do you get that too? Like
when you're drinking.
A hangover or a headache?
Yeah. When you're drinking. Yeah. I feel that too. It's the sugar, right? I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
It just doesn't sit
Once
well
you're kind of
with me.
detoxed off of it, you can probably feel the true effect on the body.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what I would love to see, is just like lounges. I think when they do approve, when the law does go through, I think that will come into place. Like, a lot of the cannabis stores that we see right now that have additional space, they'll probably create consumption lounges.
That would be amazing.
That's what they do in Thailand. So it just makes sense. US, LA, they have the same thing. So
and they're wanting to reverse it now in Thailand. Right?
Yeah.
Bummer.
I don't hope they don't go through with it.
Yeah.
It's tough, but Thailand is amazing. Have you ever been?
I haven't. No.
Oh my God. You gotta go.
You love it? Yeah.
Amazing culture, food, weather, people. It's so dope there. I love it. Yeah.
I do love Thai food.
Oh my God. It's like $2 noodles, like the best tasting pad see ew ever. Like the texture of the noodles, like you'll never get in Toronto.
I was just going to say, do you have a favorite Thai spot in Toronto?
Ooh, I really like Kolipe.
Okay.
On Baldwin. They're pretty authentic, I would say.
Haven't tried it.
Yeah. And I also really like Laos food.
Okay.
Like Laotian food. There's a good place called, what's it called? I can't remember. I'll send it to you after.
Okay.
But it's really good.
Yeah.
There's a guy in DuPont too. I just went there. He's either Laos or Indonesian. I can't remember.
Okay.
But it's really good. Okay, and it cooks out of this small little house. And it's just like home cooked food. I bought his sauce as well. I put on my eggs and rice now.
That sounds perfect.
Good.
I'm definitely going to go.
Yeah.
Do you like Malaysian food?
Yeah.
I went for Malaysian at Seuss on Ossington.
Oh yeah, that place is good too. There's not a lot of Malaysian food. Yeah.
There's not, and it's so
Seuss
yummy.
is so good.
Yeah. All
Their,
the Asian flavors.
Salad. They're like 50 ingredient salad or whatever. Yeah.
Okay, I didn't get to try that. Next time.
Yeah.
Cool. So I'm kind of hearing that you're envisioning kind of like food culture being applied to cannabis culture, like
everything
cooking classes.
Yeah. Anything in Toronto
classes.
that is cultured and creative, just add some cannabis to it.
Yeah.
Like
art tours.
Yeah. Vintage shopping. Like
vintage shopping.
You know?
Yo, I did that in Montreal when I went.
Oh.
All of my friends were hungover and sleeping. I got up
Yeah.
because I went to bed at a reasonable hour, smoked weed, went vintage shopping, and I had the best time. And there was an almond croissant involved.
Oh, yes. Yeah. See, like,
So good.
just like anything that's part of regular life. That's essentially what it should be.
It just makes things better.
Yeah.
Which is why
Yeah.
you have to be careful with it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Bring it back to the mindfulness.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Yeah. That being said, what are your favorite things to do while you're high?
Oh, I'm trying to think. I haven't relaxed in a long time because I've been working so much
Aw.
lately. So I'm like trying to remember. Oh, actually, no. Last night, where did I go for dinner? I went to Bar Vendetta yesterday for dinner. Had some really good pasta. So I love eating. Usually it will be like have a nice reservation somewhere. We'll eat dinner and then we'll walk around, and just hang out at a park or I don't know, look at puppies and dogs. I love dogs as well. So I just went to a bulldog puppy class. That's what I did recently.
Okay. And were you high?
I did. I'd hit a dab before.
Okay.
And it was just, the texture of the rolls
Yeah.
on the dog. I was like just squeezing him. He was so cute.
Yeah.
I gotta show you photos. I love animals.
I saw on
Oh, you
your
saw it?
Instagram.
Yeah. Oh my God, they're so cute.
So cute.
But eating usually, or hang out with friends, watching movies. Honestly, just relaxing. I live a very wholesome life
Cooking?
now. Cooking.
Yeah.
Yes. And then sometimes if there's like music events or concerts or comedy shows.
Oh,
there's a
yes.
psychedelic comedy show next
Oh, no
Sunday.
way.
What's his name?
Should go to that.
Yeah, he's
cool.
from Comedy Central, and
Okay.
he's known for psychedelic comedy. It's
Okay.
at the Opera House or something.
That's
Yeah.
cool. I'm definitely going to check
should
that
go,
out.
yeah.
I'm definitely
Yeah.
going to check that out.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
This has been so fun. What is alive for you right now? What are you working towards? What are you really excited about?
Yeah. I would say for me is really focusing on the long form content. That's kind of been like I started at the beginning of this year, but I'm really going hard on it now that I have a clearer vision. I had to kind of like rebrand my vision for Cannabinista because I was focusing a lot of short form content and doing things a certain way, and I'm pivoting to the more mature content, I guess you could say that, more nuanced information. So I'm excited to share more topics that I haven't talked about before on those long form platforms. It's a lot of work, but it's like what gets me up every day is I'm excited to research content, film it, edit, do the whole shebang. So that's really exciting for me right now. I'm also, looking into potentially like planning an event for the fall time again, kind of like I want to keep this mindful consumption thing going and kind of having it as like a yearly event. So lots of different little things happening there. And with life, honestly, just enjoying the summer. Like, we don't really get much sunny days. Like, today's beautiful, but it was kind of cold.
It's a crap summer, honestly.
Yeah. What's going on?
Yeah.
Global warming. I don't know. It sucks.
More of a spring than a summer.
Yeah. It was really cold last night. I was walking after dinner and it was like, I had to wear like a hoodie.
Yeah.
And even then I was cold.
Yeah. So you're moving towards long form content. How can people do you have offerings? Can people work with you? Like, how do people support your work?
Yeah. So I am going to be launching programs in the fall, which is focused around mindful consumption and helping people with changing their relationship with cannabis. That is something that people come to me for a lot, is that a lot of people have developed unhealthy relationships with cannabis and they don't understand how to get back on track. And that's my bread and butter, right? It's helping people through what I've learned and a lot of the tips that I've shared with you today, right? And how to help people hold accountable and things like that. So there is ways to do that. Sometimes I do group tolerance breaks when I do that. So it's kind of like a subscriber-based community where we go on joint tolerance breaks together. And then every day I'll kind of give like tips and tricks or thoughts of prompts for people to think about. So that's how people can support my work. People can subscribe to my newsletter. That's really important for me as well because ultimately,
it's a good one.
Yes, newsletter is important because you can own that platform, right? That's the problem with these social media giants is like any day they can take you down, right? So I need to be able to communicate with that community. You can subscribe to my newsletter, but honestly, just like following me on all channels is the most important.
What are your handles and how can people find you?
Everything is Cannabinista. And then on the podcast, it's Mindful Consumption Podcast. But if you just Google me, you'll see or Instagram, all the links are in the bio.
Amazing. Welcome to the long form content world.
I love it.
Yeah, it's so fun. This has been so nice.
Yes.
I love it.
I'm glad we did this. Thank you.
Me
Thanks
too.
so much.
Thank you. Is there any last words that you want to leave people with?
No, honestly, just, having this ability to like even just talk about cannabis more openly, I think is wonderful. And, I'm sure your listeners will also like this because they're cannabis adjacent, right? And you've had other cannabis topics episodes before. So I hope some people can find this conversation interesting and maybe learn something new that they haven't heard before.
I think a lot of what we talked about is completely applicable to microdosing, to any type of recreational psychedelic experience, and also just life. So, yeah, I think this is going to land. All right. Thanks for listening, everyone. And thank you, Anna, for being on today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to and supporting the show. To stay in touch, sign up for my mailing list, which can be found in the show notes or on modernpsychedelics.net. If this episode sparked something within, please let me know by leaving a review of the Modern Psychedelics podcast on Apple and Spotify. This really helps to share these messages with those who need them, which is the whole reason why I do what I do. And if you haven't already, come join the ongoing conversation over on Instagram with other beautiful souls. We have an incredible and conscious community over at the handle Modern Psychedelics. And don't forget that the work begins after you come back down to earth. And I'm standing shoulder to shoulder, doing it with you.